to do some questions, and so we'll leave the majority of the time open for that. But I am so excited to be here and get to be part of this program and what Mike has been working so hard over the last several months to put together. I actually met Mike Rogers right here, and a few people around the room were part of that event. We did a roundtable specifically on workforce development, and we were sitting there, and this guy just wouldn't stop talking. He kept going and kept going, but he actually had a lot of important, knowledgeable things to say, and we walked out of there, and I said, we're going to hire him. I don't know for what. I don't know how we are going to convince him to leave the private sector and come work for the state, but I walked out of that room and I said, we have to have Mike Rogers helping us lead this effort. And I went on a crusade at that point to recruit Mike, and am so thankful that we were able to do that and get him to take on the new role that we created as the Chief Workforce Officer. There is very little that is more important in our state to help us drive economic development, economic growth, than building a skilled, qualified workforce. Over the course of the 2 years I spent on the campaign, every single community I went to, every single business leader I met with, whether I was in Northwest, Southwest, Northeast, Southeast, or Central Arkansas, every single one said the exact same thing. The biggest challenge they have in their business is hiring skilled, qualified workers. So we knew that had to be one of the biggest focuses that we had. Starting first with education, that was one of the biggest priorities I had during this last legislative session, and will continue to be the biggest priority I have, hopefully, as 8 years as Arkansas's governor. Because to me, there's no greater way that we can build that workforce than by creating a solid foundation through education. So we've taken aggressive, bold, transformational steps over the course of the last several months to make sure every student in the state of Arkansas has access to a quality education. And now we want to help them get into the right work, into the right career, putting those kids on a pathway to prosperity versus being dependent on the system forever. And with the work that Mike is doing, we know that we can accomplish that. And so we're glad that you're here today. We're glad that you're going to help be part of helping us, because this is not something government can fix on its own. This is not something that government can wave a wand and make better. This takes everybody coming together. It takes the business industry, the community leaders, our educators, and government coming to the same table and working together to address this problem. I think Arkansas can set the standard. I think we can create the blueprint of how workforce development is done correctly, and that happens with each of you here in this room today. So I'm very thankful for your willingness to be here and be part of our efforts to really put Arkansas on the map when it comes to workforce development. So thank you, and with that, I will happily open it up and take some questions. And I also want to say a huge thank you. We've got a number of our legislators that are here. Senator English, who was doing work on workforce development and education long before it was cool. The very first time I met with her during the campaign, she was pulling literally folders and folders and these huge spreadsheets that spread across about 6 of these tables put together from the back of her car to show me all the things that we were going to do. And we're very excited for her efforts, but there are a number of other legislators around the room. If you guys don't mind just standing up so that we can recognize you and thank you for the work that you're doing, because none of the things that we were able to do this last session would have been possible without the leadership of these guys. Thank y'all. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and we'll be happy to take some questions.
Yes, we have our first question. You're going to get to see Mike run, the mic run. So Randy Henderson of Nucor had a question to start. You had to sit in the back corner, didn't you, Randy?
Thank you, Mike. I just knew Mike would put me on the spot this morning. Everyone, if you have a challenge in your workforce, what challenges do you have in your workforce with regards to recruitment, with regards to people that need jobs, and regards to people that are unemployed?
Randy, you want me to answer that, or this group of people? I'm kidding. So just want to make sure I understand the question correctly. You're asking what are the challenges that we have for recruitment? I think one of the biggest things certainly that I've heard, and obviously this room probably knows better, and different industries are going to have different problems, but so many of the kids that show up, and even adults, they're completely unprepared and unable to take on tasks that are given to them. One of the things that I met with and took a tour of a pretty large-scale manufacturing business down in South Arkansas, they told me that one of the tests that they give is to point out 3 different measurements using a ruler. And they're very basic. I mean, it was like, can you put 2 inches and show me? And they give them a ruler and ask them to measure it out. They said 9 out of 10 students that come that are graduates from high school cannot do that. And so we aren't teaching basic skills. So we have to do a much better job. That's why education is so important, is we have to equip students. One of the things I'm so excited that doesn't get a lot of attention in the LEARNS legislation is the dual diploma track, where students in high school are getting to earn certification and credit so they can go immediately into the workforce upon graduation. They're getting those skills as sophomores, juniors, and seniors in high school, and they're being taught the things that they need to go directly into the workforce. And they're also developing a relationship with a community of business leaders that already exist right where they are. So I think that's one of the biggest pieces that we have to do a better job on, is equipping students with the right skills, engaging the business community into our education, bringing that in so that they're actually teaching the students those skills that they need so that they can go into the workforce, can make a huge difference. One of the other things that some people aren't super excited about and have had a little bit of pushback that frankly I think is one of the more important pieces of the LEARNS legislation is the community service requirement for graduation. And I had somebody ask me a few months ago, Sarah, what about the kid who doesn't have a parent that's engaged that will help get them to and from a community service project, or they may not know anybody in their community that can help them complete that? I said, well, that's the exact student that needs it more than anybody else, because they need a relationship with somebody that has a success story that they can look at and they can say, you know what, I can do this. Their school can partner with them. It is very achievable for us to help match them up with mentors within their community so that not only are they seeing, hey, I can achieve this level of success, but they also have a point of pride. Even if it's picking up trash at the high school football stadium on Saturday or Sunday after the game, they get to come in on Monday and say, I did that. This is something they got to be part of. And for a kid to have that point of pride when they have very little else to be excited about and look up to, that changes things for them. So I think there are a lot of different pieces that are helping us prepare students in a way that frankly we have never done in the past. For so long we look at education as simply what does a student know, not asking the question, what can a student do when they graduate? And we have to take a step back and say, what are we preparing them to be capable of doing when they leave here? And if it isn't stepping into the workforce or going into a continuing education so that they are better prepared for the workforce, then frankly, those of us involved in the system are failing those students, and we have to do better, and we can. Anybody else? If you have a question, feel free to just raise your hand. You're right here on the front. We're sharing a mic, so.
We'll share that mic as well. Governor, first of all, thank you very much for your emphasis. Thank you for bringing Mike on board and the focus. Just a little more specifically about state government from your perspective, how can you bring the resources of state government in your administration to addressing these particular needs?
His question, because you didn't hear in the back, was what can we do as state government to bring the resources together? One of the things, and Mike, I'm going to put you on the spot and make you talk a little bit about this. My guess is you're going to walk the group through some of this here in a little bit. But one of the things that Mike has been working around the clock on is an online resource center so that you can see in one location very easily, number one, what jobs are available right there in your backyard. What does it pay? And what do I need in order to get it? And it's something that an employee, an employer, all can go to, and it will be an easy to follow, easy to understand system so that we're bringing all of the different elements to the same location and making it very user friendly. I think it's one of the things that will be a great resource tool for both individuals looking for work, but also employers seeking to hire. And that's something that will help us bring all of those resources to one location. It also allows us, if an employer says, I need 100 of a certain type of worker, we can easily help pull what we have available, people that are looking for work, specific things like that, so that we can work directly with the business community to help address a need. We can also then look at working with a high school or a technical center, much like the one we're standing in, a training facility. If there's a new company coming in, we can partner with them to help train those individual workers so they can go straight into the workforce using that resource center. So Mike, if you don't mind, can you give a little bit more color and breakdown to what you guys have been working on and the timeline too for the launch? I love to put the pressure on in front of a large crowd of people so that it happens faster.
You know, it's been amazing, the orchestration of the workforce cabinet, which we'll get to soon, but the heavy lifters in the room, the people have been working tirelessly to bring together a vision, an idea, a strategy to serve Arkansans has been amazing. It started with the idea of eHarmony meets Indeed. Many of you have heard me say that already. Then I came back with, what if Google Maps meets Netflix, and it's a one-place, single sign-on portal, front place facing, that I can get this navigation, 6 clicks or less to an answer. So we haven't released the name yet. Are we going to keep them in suspense? We want to... You named it.
Well, what if they don't like it? Now it's... Now I feel like they have to.
They're going to love it. They're going to love it.
So it's called Launch, and we want to launch people into the workforce, and I think it's going to be a really great part of our process. And I'm glad that you mentioned the workforce cabinet, because I did not do that earlier, and I think that's one of the other ways that we're bringing all the elements together. One of the things we noticed very quickly upon stepping into state government is that we have a lot of different divisions within state government that are specifically tasked with helping on workforce development. And I asked how often they met and was looking to get this report of all the different things that they're working on together. And when I asked that, the guy I was talking to said, well, we've never sat down together. I said, I don't understand. How is it possible that there are 7 different divisions and you are all literally tasked with working on building a skilled, qualified workforce, and you don't meet regularly? And they were like, well, we just each operate kind of our area and our division. So we quickly created the workforce cabinet, and now all of our cabinet secretaries are meeting on the monthly basis and talking frequently with one another about how we're bringing all those programs together and integrating the system. We were functioning so much in silos that we were duplicating efforts. We didn't know what was working and what wasn't working, and now we have a much more streamlined, efficient process that Mike is helping lead, and several members of our workforce cabinet are here today, and we have some of the best and brightest people, both from the private sector and from public service, that are coming together and helping us address this problem. So I'm really thankful for their commitment and the work that they're doing. Randy, I said I wasn't going to call on you. So if anybody else has a question, we'll be... I'm kidding.
Governor, again, let me amen what Danny said. Thanks for being here and all the leadership and the effort, especially with Mike's leadership. A big part of the challenge that employers face, all we hear from members is the people that I see and that are candidates fall short very often. It's tough to hire, as you've heard those stories time after time. Our labor force participation rate is running about 5.5 to 6 percentage points below the national average. To me, this is one of the root causes of the supply problem. The demand is there. The supply is what we've got to work on. Is there any effort, I know there is, or conversations going on with some of the health and welfare agencies that meet those people who are on the sidelines with benefit programs and all that kind of stuff. Is there any activity or way to sort of connect the supply with the demand that would get at that participation rate?
There are certainly some things that we can do, and one of the things that we've been pushing for, and Secretary Putnam, who runs DHS, is here and part of the workforce cabinet. And one of the areas that we are aggressively leaning into are workforce requirements for people that are on government assistance and programs. And when we have able-bodied individuals, they should be participating in the workforce of our state. And so we've applied for a waiver through CMS to pursue that. We feel very confident. I know it's been done in the past, but Arkansas is actually poised to, and I may put Secretary Putnam on the spot because she spent a lot of time researching and working for us to find a new way to apply for that waiver, and we feel like we have done that in a very creative and different way that puts us on much better footing. Secretary Putnam, if you don't mind just kind of giving a breakdown, but I think that we're always looking for ways to do that, and that's one of our best places where I think we have the ability and some leverage to pull some of those able-bodied individuals off the sidelines and put them into the workforce. So if you don't mind just giving a little more detail.
I didn't know I signed up for a speaking part, but I'm Christy Putnam. I'm Secretary of Department of Human Services. Literally every issue that we deal with in our communities that's a social challenge can be solved with the right opportunity. And so one of the things that we are focusing on is we requested, I think my second week here, I went to Secretary McDonald and I said the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program is something that we could really use at DHS to help support some of our individuals who need additional connections. So what we're working on, like the governor said, we are working on multiple fronts, one of which is applying for a waiver from Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services to allow us to incorporate a work component. It's not a requirement, it's a work component in our Medicaid program for our expanded population, those who are have received Medicaid because we expanded here in Arkansas. That's just one of the ways. We have other work programs in our department. We have SNAP employment and training. Many of you are probably providers and familiar with that. But we are looking to combine all these things with Mike's help and with the Workforce Cabinet's help to make sure that we're wrapping around services and supports for families who just have some barriers to employment. I know, I've been in the private sector. I know that a lot of people have childcare, transportation. Those are the two top reasons why people say they can't work. And then there's also the fiscal cliff, the benefits cliff. So when they can't promote or can't work extra hours because if they get extra income, additional income, they move out of eligibility for assistance. That is something that we're going to need everybody in this room and beyond to help address because it is not a quick fix. So we'll be bringing lots of ideas and solutions, but we will be asking for help. And so I just appreciate the support. It's wonderful to work with great partners on the Workforce Cabinet, but we look forward to partnering with the employers. So thank you.
One thing I want to add too that we are doing is trying to lead by example from the state perspective. And Secretary Putnam came to us with this idea to run a pilot program, which we actually have kicked off and started at DHS, where we allow workers to bring their children to work, newborn babies up to 6 months. Is that correct? I want to make sure I get the numbers correct for the pilot program. But that does a couple things. It helps us keep moms in the workforce, but it also helps provide that bonding time that we know is so important, and there's so much data to support. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to do from a state perspective is lead by example and allow those moms to continue in the workforce. We've also started a program that we're piloting at DHS as well that is part of that. And that allows parents to bring their kids to work on days if the school closes last minute, which a lot of parents have experienced over the last couple of years in particular. It's not a long-term daycare. We are not creating that at DHS, to be clear. But there are so many times where parents have something come up at the last minute and they either means they can't come to work or they're leaving their kids at home by themselves. And so we want to alleviate that. And so we created that Bring to Work program. You have to have approval from your supervisor to participate in things like that, but it's something that we're trying to pilot from a state perspective, and we're continuing to look for innovative ways that we can engage and bring more people into the workforce and lead by example as the state. Sure. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
We want to capture it. People are watching remotely, so we want to make sure that it's here. Now you got to be careful.
That's okay. I'm Sarah Roberts with Cobalt Aero Services in Hot Springs. We've run into the problem here lately where evidently the COVID crisis is over, so a lot of people are coming off of state insurance. And I've ran into a major crisis of everybody scrambling to get insurance, and I can't afford it. I can't afford my medicine. I can't afford this. They say I make too much, and they're making $11, $12 an hour. So what are we doing to alleviate that, or is it something that is going to fix itself, or they just have to reapply? Because we've had a lot of that.
I was going to say, I think I'm happy to answer that if you'd like, Governor. So the public health emergency unwinding is what you're referring to, and we have gone through eligibility redetermination. If individuals are making too much money to qualify for their level of Medicaid, they have been discontinued. What we've been working on is we've been trying to partner with providers and with other community partners to make sure that if they qualify for support through the federal marketplace, that they are getting referred to that, because chances are if they're making just too much to qualify for Medicaid, they probably qualify for a significant subsidy up to 400% of the federal poverty level. So that's something that I'm happy to offer my contact information. People will be reapplying. If they were discontinued in error or they didn't return their information, then they should reach out to DHS. But we definitely want to make sure that they're connected to the right level of coverage. There's coverage for them. It just may be a different kind of coverage. Yeah.
Just to also add a point of clarification, I think one of the big things that people may not be getting a full picture is that we had, I want to say on average, about 20 to 30,000 people a month prior to COVID are removed from those roles as standard practice because they are no longer eligible. No one that is eligible for Medicaid should be removed. These are people who either have gotten jobs in the process over the last couple of years and no longer are meeting that eligibility requirement. This is something that we've always done and always removed people who are no longer eligible, but that was put on pause during the COVID pandemic. We went through a couple years where no individual was able to be removed, whether they had taken on a new job or had no longer met the eligibility requirement. We could not remove them. And so we had a backlog of about 400,000 to 500,000 people roughly that were no longer eligible that traditionally would have been rotated off. So it feels like there are a lot more all at one time, because there are. But there was a law passed that also required Arkansas to remove those individuals within 6 months. And so DHS has been working around the clock to put out notification to those individuals that they would be removed, but if they felt that was a mistake, they could reapply, and there were a lot of different processes and points of contact attempted to make sure anybody that was eligible still received care. And if you know, as the Secretary said, there are a lot of different pathways. Even if it's not Medicaid, there are a lot of other options that we can help facilitate through DHS if they still need assistance. Sure. Yes, sir. Walk that back there to you. Thank you for meeting me halfway.
Yes. Thank you for having this. My name's Chris West. I own a plumbing business, 34 years in the trade, so I'm here to represent skilled trades, also representing Plumbing, Heating, Cooling Contractors Association of Arkansas, which has newly been formed. My question is, my business model, to frame the question, my business model has been to recruit young kids out of school. I've had to mainly draw in the first 20 years probably from homeschool programs because there was this wall in the public education system. It's been my goal to basically recruit young kids, give them a trade, mentor them into life, make it to where they can have a lifelong career for me with all the benefits that the white-collar world enjoys, and we've achieved that. So my question is, what can we do to re-educate the educator that skilled trades is not a second choice? One example, I have a employee that's an apprentice, and he has a master's degree with speech pathology and literally worked a year in the program and left because he couldn't find the value in what he was doing. And so basically he's a classic example of where he was misdirected, at an early age. So how can we re-educate the educator?
First of all, if you could give your number out to everybody in the room, because anytime you really need a plumber, it's very hard to get them to show up. So I feel like you have a pretty captive audience for business right here, but I think you pose a really great question and certainly a problem that we have allowed to build exponentially over the last several decades. For so long, we kind of pushed, frankly, what I think is a lie to so many kids. Most of the people in this room were raised to think that if they somehow didn't go and get a 4-year degree, they were less than, when nothing could be further from the truth. We have to change the way that we are talking about opportunity that exists right here in our own backyards, whether it is that skilled trade in plumbing, electricians, manufacturing. There are so many incredible pathways for students that don't require a 4-year degree. Putting those apprenticeship programs, that dual diploma track that we're trying to implement into high schools all across the state, those are the types of things that I think we will see a real difference. But letting kids know that there are a lot of different ways to build a career and be successful is really important. One of the things I talk about a lot too is we have to put it in terms that kids understand. You start trying to talk to a 15, 16, 17-year-old kid about their 401k and the benefits and things like that, you've lost them. You start talking to them about the fact that they may be able to own a boat and have season tickets to the Razorbacks, you all of a sudden have their attention. And I think putting it in terms that make sense to kids is something that we have to do a better job on. And that's one of the things that we're trying to do. And I think that's one of the places where Mike is really going to have a lot of opportunity, is those partnerships with junior high and high schools around the state, helping people understand the various opportunities, but not just what exists, but helping them build a pathway to get there too. And partnering with people like you who are willing to take on and train those kids is going to be what I think makes a long-term difference. I think we got time for a couple more questions. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks so much for being here and focusing on the issue, and for bringing together the existing departments working on this. I think that's extraordinary. My question has more to do with how can the state continue to support emerging industries? Industry moves quickly and new things are always on the forefront, and right now I feel like it's landing on nonprofits who are working well with OSD and others, but how can the state help to support that in terms of helping to create the career progressions, link them to training opportunities, help the employers know they don't have to always train completely internally?
Great question. I think that's where we have to lean somewhat on the business community to help us guide those steps. That's one of the things I know that Mike is trying to work on. But one thing I try to point out is that as a small state, we have the ability to take on a handful of things and do them really, really well. We don't have to be all things to all people. We don't have to be the best in 400 different industries, but we can be really good at about 20 or 25. So let's zero in on the places where we know we can win, and let's really lean into those spaces. That's kind of what Mike has been building out, that I know he's planning to walk through, is some of the categories, and then building skills training centers around helping produce and provide the skills training needed so that we can be number one in those categories. If we go out, and Hugh McDonald, the Secretary of Commerce, is here, and if Hugh tries to chase after every single business, every single potential company anywhere on the globe, we'll never land anything. But if we decide there are a handful of places where we have the right to win, and we're really aggressive, and we build the skilled training centers around those areas, then I think we have the ability to really transform our success story. And so that's what we're trying to do, is streamline that process and really focus in on some key areas that we know we can really excel in. Class is over. Hopefully that means it's lunchtime. We'll take one last question right here.
Hey, Governor. Chad Causey, Arkansas Aerospace and Defense. You touched on a lot of critical points on getting kids into the workforce. And I think our industry, I represent aerospace and defense companies that have a major presence here in Arkansas, as you know, and we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about creating the jobs that require these critical, important conversations about workforce training. And just wanted to say thank you to you and your team, the governor's office, at Secretary of Commerce, McDonald, and AEDC for leading a group of aerospace and defense companies over to the Paris Air Show, the largest air show in the world. I think that is critical in order to recruit the jobs to come here. I think we're seeing that success. And we have got to have those jobs in order to fill them. And one of the things that our industry has focused on is how do we get and encourage that next generation workforce. And I think you just touched on this a couple of questions ago in discussing, how do you make it resonate with a junior high kid that is trying to figure out what they're going to do for a career, and maybe a bass boat and Razorback tickets is more appropriate. I call it the Boom and Zoom. I pitched Mike on the Boom and Zoom Academy. Y'all went with Launch, but I think Launch works for me too. Well, good. My question is, what can industry do to work with you, to work with Mike, to assist y'all in making those critical connections for kids in junior high, high school that are making those career decisions? What can we do as an industry to support your efforts?
First of all, thanks, Chad. I think you standing up brings up a valid point, kind of what you were asking and what I was talking about before, in spaces that I think Arkansas has the right to win. Aerospace and defense is one of the places where Arkansas has a right to win, and where we're frankly leading. It is now the #1 export that we have, which a lot of people don't know. It's a $1 billion industry for the state of Arkansas, and growing. And that's exactly the type of area where we can lean into and continue to grow. How we, I think, talk to those students is frankly sometimes you guys showing up. I know, Randy, you guys have done a lot, and through Be Pro, Be Proud, y'all have gone around and shown kids and let them come in and play with simulators and see what a job actually looks like. But showing up, I think, is half the battle. So many kids have no idea what opportunities exist. And so that's one of the reasons we're trying to build these partnerships, so that not only do kids know what their life can look like with the paycheck that they can earn, but they also have hands-on experience and the ability to talk to somebody who is leading in that industry, that they can see that as somebody who's part of their community, and they know what that looks like for them in a town like El Dorado or Smackover or Paragould. They get to see it firsthand. And I think that makes such a huge difference, because so many kids just don't know what exists. And so showing up, walking them through, here's what it looks like, here's what's required of you to get here, and here are the ways that we're going to help you facilitate those things. I think that makes a huge difference. And so, especially in an industry like yours, people think that, building rockets and missiles are kind of cool when they're in high school. And so talking about that and showing them those things can be really fun and interesting for 15 and 16-year-old kids. But yes, ma'am. Well, I said that was the last question, but we'll come back over here.
Well, addressing that. So.
Sure.
And Chad, we've met before. So actually, Cobalt Aero Services is working in hand with, we have a meeting this next week, with National Park College to get a program up and running for basic mechanical skills for aircraft mechanics. And I know Bill Allison is here, and Gary Jackson, Gary Troutman know about this. We are having this meeting, so if anybody would like some information after we meet up and see how far we've gotten to make this a go, that's a critical source. This campus right here would be a great source as well, and we would like to include as many people as we can.
Well, I want to say again, thank you so much for whoever's controlling that obviously didn't vote for me, so only kidding. I want to say again how much we appreciate you showing up. I think that for so many parts of this puzzle coming together is all of the various sectors working hand in hand. And that's what I'm hopeful Mike is able to achieve, is bringing all the players, all the stakeholders to the same table and helping address the problem. I want Arkansas to lead in this effort. I know we're capable of it, and I think that the willingness and the number of people that are in this room today shows that we're serious about doing that. And with each of you participating and being willing, I think we can really put ourselves on the map for what true workforce development looks like and how to do it right. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Mike, for your leadership, to all of our cabinet, and to each of you for showing up. So thanks so much for being here today.